7. Blended Finance. Introduction to Blended Finance. Blended finance combines public and private funds to attract private investment in developing markets. It helps bring private capital into socially beneficial projects that are otherwise too risky or not profitable. Public or concessional funds are used to reduce risks and improve returns for private investors. It helps bridge financing gaps in green finance, renewable energy, and infrastructure. Private investors avoid infrastructure projects due to high risks, long project duration, high upfront costs, political/regulatory uncertainty. Blended finance improves risk-adjusted returns through tools like concessional loans, guarantees, equity support. Widely used in PPPs for climate mitigation, renewable energy, and social impact sectors. Plays a key role in low-income and fragile states where private investment is very limited. Supports economic growth and poverty reduction by enabling innovative and high-impact projects. Characteristics of blended finance. Concessional finance is financing on terms and/or conditions that are more favorable than those available from the market. It is generally sourced from governments or other development partners, for example, development agencies, multilateral development banks or funds. Or philanthropic organizations, such as foundations, charitable organizations, that require less of a return than the market. Guarantees or risk-sharing facilities, which transfer all or part of the financial risk of a loan or group of loans to the guarantor, with fees charged at below market rates. This could be, for example, in the form of a first loss protection, where the donor guarantees a portfolio of investments of a financial intermediary and pays out before the senior guarantor in case there is a payment default. Equity, an ownership stake in a company or participation in a fund, with return expectations below what market investors would expect. Grants, either finance with no expectation of repayment, or performance grants that are paid if a project reaches specified milestones. Blended finance is a structuring approach that allows organizations with different objectives to invest alongside each other while achieving their own objectives. Blended finance is not an investment approach, instrument, or end solution. It is also different from impact investing. Impact investing is an investment approach, and impact investors often participate in blended finance structures. Convergence focuses on blended finance in developing countries. Developing countries face significant challenges including low levels of access to safe drinking water, sanitation and hygiene, energy poverty, high levels of pollution, high rates of tropical and infectious diseases, and a lack of physical infrastructure. Blended finance can create investment opportunities in developing countries, crowding in additional private sector funds in volumes never before seen. The transaction contributes towards achieving the SDGs. However, not every participant needs to have that development objective. Private investors in a blended finance structure may simply be seeking a market rate financial return. Overall, the transaction expects to yield a positive financial return. Different investors in a blended finance structure will have different return expectations, ranging from concessional to market rate. The public and/or philanthropic parties are catalytic. The participation from these parties improves the risk/return profile of the transaction in order to attract participation from the private sector. Role of multilateral development banks in deploying blended finance. Multilateral development banks play a critical role in this process, leveraging their unique expertise, resources, and mandates to address the market failures and risk aversion that typically discourage private investment in infrastructure. They can structure blended finance vehicles that combine public capital with private sector funds, providing the right mix of equity, debt, and grant financing to make projects financially viable. The involvement of MDBs in PPPs is particularly crucial in emerging markets, where infrastructure needs are significant but private investment is often deterred by high perceived risks. MDBs are adept at structuring risk-sharing arrangements and offering concessional finance to encourage private sector participation, WB 2023A. Their expertise enables them to provide the patient capital required for long-term infrastructure projects, an essential feature of many PPPs. Maximizing Finance for Development, MFD, strategy. The World Bank's Maximizing Finance for Development, MFD, strategy prioritizes the mobilization of private capital through blended finance and PPPs. Through this strategy, MDBs have developed methodologies for calculating and reporting private investment in infrastructure projects, providing a clear pathway for investors to participate, WB 2018. The Private Sector Window, PSW, offer innovative financial products to catalyze private investment, particularly in low-income and fragile countries. Mechanisms such as the Blended Finance Facility and the Risk Mitigation Facility help reduce the risks faced by private investors, making large infrastructure projects more attractive and feasible. Risk Mitigation Facility, RMF. IFC's Risk Mitigation Facility, RMF, has been instrumental in attracting private capital to projects that would otherwise be considered too risky, such as major energy or transportation infrastructure. By providing guarantees without sovereign indemnity, the RMF mitigates risks like political instability or currency fluctuations. Enabling private sector participation in critical development projects, IDA 2023. The latest midterm review provides lessons on the allocation of concessional and private capital mobilization through PSW, WB 2023b. Blended Finance Facility, BFF. IFC's Blended Finance Facility, BFF, combines support from the IDA private sector window with strategic IFC investments in sectors that offer significant development impact, such as small and medium enterprises, SMEs, agribusiness, healthcare, education, affordable housing, infrastructure, and climate change mitigation and adaptation. By addressing a range of financial risks linked to investments in SMEs, agribusiness, and other pioneering sectors, the BFF helps unlock private sector opportunities that drive productivity gains and innovation. It builds upon and broadens IFC's existing blended finance initiatives, including the blended climate finance programs, the private sector window of the Global Agriculture and Food Security Program, GAFSP, and SME finance facilities, while also expanding into new, high-impact areas, IDA 2024. IFC's blended finance instruments and facilities. At IFC, blended finance is a financing package of concessional funding from development partners, blended with commercial funds from IFC's own resources, other development finance institutions, and the private sector. For close to 20 years, IFC has used blended finance to enable private sector development in innovative and nascent sectors in emerging markets. Blended finance supports high-impact transformational projects in new sectors, technologies, and challenging markets or market segments. IFC blended concessional finance has been supporting private sector investment by IFC and others in key development areas, including climate change, agribusiness and food security, gender, SMEs, health, and low-income and fragile and conflict-affected markets, especially through the IDA private sector window. Blended finance products. IFC's and other DFI's blended finance products are market-linked instruments, including senior and subordinated debt, guarantees, and equity, along with others related to local currency. The choice of instrument depends on participation or behavioral constraints limiting the flow of private capital. Blended finance co-investments can be structured to 1. Mitigate investment risks and rebalance risk-reward through de-risking to crowd in commercial and DFI investors. 2. Provide pricing discounts to enhance returns and help make the project sustainable. 3. Align incentives and maximize development impact. The 5 DFI enhanced blended finance principles. When IFC considers providing a co-investment for blended finance in a particular project, it reviews the project based on the DFI enhanced blended finance principles. IFC chairs the DFI Working Group on Blended Concessional Finance, consisting of over 20 DFIs. In 2017, the group agreed on the set of 5 enhanced principles to have a common approach to using blended concessional finance in the private sector. These principles include 1. Economic rationale for using blended concessional finance. The project must have strong development impact, clear DFI additionality, and blended finance additionality. 2. Crowding in and minimum concessionality. Concessional funds should be used in a targeted and catalytic manner, ensuring only the minimum support necessary to make projects viable. 3. Commercial sustainability. Projects and sectors need to become commercially sustainable to contribute to market development. 4. Reinforcing markets. Concessional funds should help create markets and reinforce market reforms. 5. Promoting high standards. Strong governance processes and high transparency are required to ensure the effective application of these principles. Key stakeholders. Governments and regulators, public sector entities that provide concessional capital, grants, and enabling policy environments for blended finance initiatives. Donors and philanthropic organizations, entities that often provide catalytic funding through grants, concessional loans, or high-risk positions. Multilateral organizations and development banks, organizations like the World Bank, IFC, and European Investment Bank that provide both concessional and non-concessional resources. Private sector investors, commercial banks, institutional investors, pension funds, and insurance companies that provide commercial capital seeking market rate returns. Educational institutions, schools and educational organizations that implement projects funded through blended finance mechanisms. Local communities and beneficiaries, students, teachers, and communities who ultimately benefit from the funded educational initiatives. Implementing agencies, organizations responsible for executing blended finance projects and programs. Coordinating organizations, entities that facilitate blended finance arrangements and coordinate between different stakeholders. Funding sources. Government funding. Public sector entities and donor agencies provide concessional capital or grants that act as catalytic capital to attract additional financing. Philanthropic organizations and foundations, provide catalytic funding to blended finance vehicles through grants, concessional loans, or high-risk positions. Multilateral organizations like the IFC, FMO, and European Investment Bank provide both concessional and non-concessional resources. Private sector investors, commercial banks, institutional investors, pension funds, and insurance companies provide commercial capital seeking market returns. Framework pillars. Coordination and leadership supports governance through impact bonds like Quality Education India that emphasize monitoring, evaluation, and evidence-informed decision-making. Connectivity and infrastructure. Well suited for large-scale infrastructure projects like the GPE Multiplier Fund's deployment of 50,000 devices to teachers in Ukraine and Rwanda's last-mile internet connections for schools. Capacity and culture supports capacity-building initiatives like the IFC's risk-sharing initiative in Ghana providing technical assistance to schools on financial management. Content and solutions enables development of educational content as shown by the Quality Education India DIB support for computer-based adaptive learning platforms. Data and evidence supports data initiatives as demonstrated by the Uzbekistan Early Childhood Development SIB's contribution to developing a data culture in preschool education. Impact of blended finance and private capital mobilization. Blended finance infrastructure deals attracted 40% of private capital for every $1 worth of public or philanthropic money during 2021 to 2023. And around 10% of them mobilized more than $2 for every $1, according to the Infrastructure Monitor 2023 report based on Convergence Database, GI Hub 2023. However, most blended finance currently used to mobilize private capital heavily relies on government financial support and collaboration between public and private sectors, WB 2024a. In addition to blended finance, MDBs also employ sophisticated financial instruments like project bonds, syndicated loans, and structure equity investments to facilitate the flow of private capital into infrastructure projects. These tools help scale up financing by bringing together a mix of public, private, and institutional investors to pool resources for large-scale projects. MDBs are essential for mobilizing private capital, particularly in the infrastructure sector. They enhance the marginal productivity of capital in developing countries, thus encouraging private investors to commit funds. Additionally, MDBs create innovative financial structures that go beyond traditional financing methods, which helps to unlock the potential for large-scale private investments. PPPs are critical mechanisms in this effort, facilitating the flow of private capital, WB 2024b. https://ppp.worldbank.org/blended-finance